In a futuristic world, humanity survives inside a city enclosed within a geodesic disco ball. To maintain the supposed utopia, all inhabitants are put to death on their 30th birthday. However, some of these people choose to run. Femininity in the post-apocalypse.
How's it going, you fantastic folks from the Forbidden Zone? This is Femininity in the Post-Apocalypse, a feminist exploration of dystopian media. I'm your host, Klaire Lockheart. I'm a nerdy artist who spends way too much time working alone in my studio, which is why I'm happy to chat about the movie Logan's Run from 1976 with my amazing guest. We'll rate the film, and at the end of the show, I'll announce the next recipient of the Honorary Doctor of Dystopian Studies degree from the unaccredited College of Clare. Thanks so much for joining us. My guest is Egyptologist Peter Rose, who excavated in the Theban necropolis in Luxor, but you might recognize him as the creator and host of the Mummy Movie Podcast. If you enjoy ancient Egyptian-themed films, you absolutely must subscribe to his show. You can also support his work on patreon.com/mummymoviepodcast. That's spelled MUMMYMOVIEPODCAST. Peter Rose is incredibly knowledgeable, very funny, and he has a soft spot for films that are so bad they're good. Welcome to the show, Peter.
Hiya, thanks very much for having me. Happy to be here.
I'm so happy to see you, especially because you have been incredibly busy. You recently released the 100th episode of your show.
Yes, very, very proud of that one. 100 episodes, doing at least one episode a week. For a period of time, 2 a week, but that was exhausting.
That is an incredible task, and I feel a little bad about asking you to watch one more movie. But any of my friends who have visited a museum with me and witnessed me accidentally give an unsanctioned tour in the ancient Egyptian gallery already knows that I'm a big fan of the Mummy Movie Podcast. Your program is not only entertaining, but I get to learn about ancient Egyptian history, mythology, and terminology. I'm also comforted in knowing that I'm not the only person who has watched Bubba Hotep, Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy, and Manos, The Hands of Fate.
Yeah, I have a feeling you suggested some of those ones, actually.
I'm sorry.
I can't remember if you were the one who suggested Bubba Hotep, but that was definitely my favorite out of those three. I will admit I was aware of it before you suggested it, but I'd sort of deliberately not watched it because I'd seen the synopsis for it and just thought, I'm not sure about that one, but I was genuinely surprised that I actually enjoyed that film.
It is terrible, but I'm a huge Bruce Campbell fan, and it's so ridiculous. It's enjoyable for me.
Yeah.
In addition to you having to review all of these movies, I know you've been incredibly busy with your marketing. At the end of your show, you usually do a plug or suggestion on how we can help promote the Mummy Movie Podcast. And I have to say it's working. Out here in the United States, I have been seeing Mummy Movie Podcast billboards. Last week, I saw a scarab-shaped hot air balloon fly through my neighborhood, and they were dropping Mummy Movie Podcast promotional material. This is all very true, of course. I'm not making
Yeah,
this
of course.
up. And this morning, I was chatting with a tattoo artist friend of mine, and she said everybody is getting Egyptian coffin tattoos specifically. So that way, when strangers go, "Oh, I like your sarcophagus tattoo," they could be like, it's a coffin. And if you listen to the Mummy Movie Podcast, you could be fun at parties like I am.
That one does come up quite a lot, the sarcophagus, I'm not going to lie. As long as you're not interrupting any sort of weddings or anything like that, because I have suggested that before and immediately had to backtrack going, I don't want to ruin someone's wedding.
I did go to a wedding reception recently and I had to hold myself back.
You didn't shout, I object then or anything. That's good. Okay.
No, I was too busy eating cake, but I do enjoy the sense of humor you inject into your show along with the actual knowledgeable content.
Thank you very much.
Peter, I am so honored you could join me so we could talk about the movie Logan's Run. But first, please tell us your history with the film. Do you remember watching this movie when you were younger?
Yeah, actually, I do. So I sort of had a bit of I didn't actually have a TV till I was about like 14 years old, which is probably why I quite like film now, to be honest with you. But so I generally watch films around sort of like my friend's house, my grandparents' house, that kind of thing. This one, I'm pretty sure it was around my grandparents' house when I was about 10 years old. And I remember the stereotypical scene of sitting way too close to the TV, cross-legged, square-eyed and all that. One thing I did notice on the rewatch, though, because I haven't seen this film probably for about 20 odd years,
Wow.
was that I was definitely watching an abridged version of this film. There is no way my parents were letting me watch some of those scenes.
Oh, goodness. I watched this movie for the first time a few months ago. And as an adult, yeah, I can't imagine letting a 10-year-old watch this movie.
No.
I'm going to summarize the plot of Logan's Run as best as I can to help refresh our memories or to fill in the gaps for anyone listening who hasn't watched it but enjoys our company. Peter, please feel free to jump in at any time to help me out. Afterwards, we'll discuss the movie and then we'll rate it using the Maenad-O-Meter. Because the ancient Greek Maenads had a reputation for shirking their responsibilities and sneaking off to the woods to party and drink wine, I'll admit that I watched this movie instead of doing real work. Peter, did you have anything good to eat or drink while watching Logan's Run most recently?
In terms of drinks, I was very boring and I just had a coffee. In terms of food, this could be quite interesting because obviously you're American, I'm English, we have different food. So we'll see. Do you know what fruit gums are?
No, I do not.
No. Okay. Do you know what wine gums are?
But I'm intrigued.
Oh, okay. I was hoping you did know what wine gums were. Basically, just sort of chewy, fruity sweets, I suppose. That's the best way I can describe them.
No, that's great. My husband figured out when we were dating that I am a person who likes to talk during movies. And so when we go to the cinema in person, he makes sure to buy me the biggest box of whatever the stickiest candy is to hopefully keep me occupied.
We don't tend to have that. I'm guessing, do you mean like popcorn with like butter and stuff like that in there?
Oh, no, like candy that's really sticky and takes me a long time to eat.
Oh, fair enough. Okay.
On my most recent watch of Logan's Run, I did have a fruit smoothie. I may have put a splash of rum in it.
Sometimes you need it to get through some of these old films, you know?
It helps. I originally intended to begin my synopsis of this movie with a Duck Dodgers in the 24th and a half century reference, but alas, this story takes place in the 23rd century. Humans live in a utopia-ish dome city that almost looks like it's made out of bubble wrap. The title card for the movie states that everyone must be put to death on their 30th birthday. I must apologize to everyone listening that I do not have as great as a dramatic intro as you do, Peter.
In fairness, I will say, like, I love the little model they have at the beginning when they're showing like the city in this film. It's great.
It's great. It looks a little cobbled together, but it's so much fun. It makes it feel like if I were a kid watching this, I probably would have built my own dome city.
Yeah, I think it's kind of weird, like watching it again. I remembered something from when I was a child, and it's something I see a lot with these kind of old like models. It's just whenever they include water in them, it's just like unnaturally big, and then everything else is like.
Oh, especially. I love all the old Gamera movies, so there's a lot of kaiju creatures rising out of the sea, and it never looks right, but it's always fun. Now, the protagonist, Logan 5, and his bro, Francis 7, kick off the story by harassing some babies in that stereotypical newborn display case. Peter, what number would you like to have added to the end of your name?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I'd probably go 5 as well, to be honest with you.
Oh, right.
Yeah. I don't know. Did you ever watch Short Circuit back in the day?
Oh, and that's the robot with...
Yeah, yeah. I'm just thinking, is it Johnny 5 in that? So I want it purely, not because of this, but because of that.
And then how would we write the 5? Do we have to do it in hieroglyphs?
That's a good question, because I'm trying to think now. You know when you say something and then like I'm trying to think, is 5 just 5 dashes in hieroglyphs, or
That's
is
what I
there
thought.
another symbol? I think it is. I think it's when you get to 10 that you get another symbol.
That little loop thing?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Everyone has gemstones implanted in their left palms, and this keeps track of their age. Somehow, the crystals grow larger as the person ages because the adults clearly have larger jewels glued to their hands, but perhaps I shouldn't question my willing suspension of disbelief so early.
I did like at the beginning where you see like the baby, and the gem they've got is quite clearly the baby just holding it. It's not it doesn't even look like it's in his hand.
You probably don't want to put spirit glue on a baby.
It's fair enough, I guess.
Anyway, Logan 5 and Francis 7 are sandmen, who are executioners who shoot anyone who tries to run away from their imminent death / 30th birthday celebration. Their uniforms are all black, but their fitted tunics have a gray horizontal band across the chest. Everyone else in the city wears flowing monochromatic tunics and tights in green and red, but the children are dressed in yellow.
Oh, I didn't actually notice that all the children are dressed in yellow. I do always find it quite funny. Doesn't matter what like sci-fi film you're watching, you always have to have people wearing these kind of like jumpsuits, often like black or red or something like that.
The townsfolk gather in the Colosseum to witness the carousel ritual, where all the 30-year-olds are sacrificed. A computer voiceover tells the participants they will be renewed.
Sorry, I've got to do it. Renew!
The 30-year-olds remove their white cloaks to reveal their red flaming unitards. Peter, do you make your friends dress up in ridiculous outfits when you celebrate your birthday?
Oh, absolutely, of course, you know.
I think I need a unitard budget for my next one. The carousel starts spinning like that horrible centrifugal force amusement park ride, and the actors are flung upwards in slow motion.
Yeah, I will say, like, Death never looked so fun, to be honest.
That's how I want to go. The people then explode while hoisted in the air by wires. Logan and Francis leave the festivities to chase down a runner. They're terrible at shooting, and they set a lot of the scenery ablaze in the process.
Yeah, they definitely did that.
I had to look up to see whether this or Star Wars came out first because of the common theme of the bad guys who are kind of fascist can't aim.
This is true. I'm pretty sure this came out, like 2 years before Star Wars, something like that.
It did. The runner falls off a balcony to his death, and Logan rummages through his pockets and steals an important item. This is an artifact of such reverence that I was able to use it as the excuse to invite you to this show. Peter, what symbol was this gravity-challenged man clutching in his cold, dead hand?
I'm not going to lie, I did suspect this might be why I was invited on. He's holding an ankh, which is basically like the Egyptian symbol for life.
Yeah, it's kind of like a capital T with an upside-down teardrop attached to the middle.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, actually. No one actually knows what it's supposed to represent. One theory that I've seen that I personally don't subscribe to, but I find quite interesting, is the idea that it could be a sandal strap. So, you know, the top of a sandal.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the bit that goes through between the toes. And then you've got the loop at the end that's supposed to attach to the bottom of the sandal. Like I say, I don't subscribe to that one, but that is one theory out there.
I'm trying to imagine wearing shoes shaped like that and why they would have flipped it upside down.
Yeah. This is what I mean. I also don't get why a sandal would mean life. Hence, I don't really get that one, but it's interesting nonetheless.
I'm just trying to think of an ancient Egyptian version of Nancy Sinatra's "These boots are made for walking," but with an ankh and sandals instead.
These flips are made for flip-flopping. I don't know.
Oh Oh my goodness. In like 2 weeks, someone's going to have a YouTube mix for us. But anyway, Logan changes into his casual Monos, the Hands of Fate caftan, minus the hand appliques. Dating technology of the future allows Logan to beam people directly into his apartment. His first option is a man. I'm not sure how the scene was originally supposed to be interpreted by audiences in 1976, but through a 21st century lens, it was nice to see the prospect of a same-sex relationship normalized in a sci-fi film.
Yeah, I could agree with that. At least, you know, it's better than it not being there at all.
Most of these movies, it's all very heteronormative. But Logan rejects the man, and he uses the Dating Transporter 2000 to summon an almost nude lady.
Sorry, no, I was just going to say that does seem to be another theme that I'm surprised my parents allowed me to watch when I was quite young.
She is wearing a gauzy green curtain that is barely held in place with a metal belt that squeezes her lower ribcage and a necklace of a large ankh. Despite all the futuristic technology, structured undergarments for women do not exist. The woman's name is Jessica, but the first thing she says to Logan is, "Please, no." She explains that she is sad because her friend was killed in the death trap salad spinner, and so she doesn't want to stoop a Sandman. Logan complains that Jessica is wasting his time, but that's okay because his buddy Francis shows up with a pair of floozies.
I will admit, when it got to this bit, the first time, I still don't know how to take the scene, but the bit where he just goes, essentially, "What are you, gay?" to her, like that, when
Yeah.
she doesn't accept him, I was like, okay, is this saying that it's okay to be gay in the future, or is this just like what I heard in high school, where it was like people complaining that a girl didn't want to go out with her, go out of them? Like, I still don't know, even to this point.
I do not either, but the next day at the sci-fi office, the computer analyzes the items Logan pilfered from the dead runner. Logan is unable to identify the ankh because apparently he doesn't have access to podcasts from the 21st century and never listened to the Mummy Movie podcast.
It's a shame that my podcast isn't going to last hundreds of years, otherwise you'd have known, you know.
Perhaps in a different dome city, they're big fans. Anyway, the femputer reveals that over 1,000 runners have escaped, which allows Logan to deduce that no one has been renewed. While experiencing this existential crisis, the computer informs Logan that he must go undercover as a runner so he can locate the sanctuary. The computer uses the technology from The Princess Bride to suck the life out of Logan, which ages him up to the ripe old age of 30.
First of all, absolutely love that comment. Princess Bride is literally one of my favorite films.
Oh no, a six-fingered man didn't kill your father, did he?
Inigo Montoya, yes. No, wait, no, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father, prepare to die. Yes.
Logan can't complete his assignment without help from Jessica, so he has her brought to him. She is dressed a little bit more conservatively than before because her tunic is no longer see-through. But she's still wearing her big-ass big ankh. It's very 70s predicted future, but fashion goes in cycles.
This is true. This is why I'm in fashion about once every 10 years, because I just wear the same thing for like that amount of time. Zip-up hoodies will be back someday.
Wait, they're not fashionable right now?
Are they not? I don't know,
Oops.
maybe. I don't know.
Logan says he couldn't get Jessica out of his mind, and she tells him no again. Logan then shows his ankh along with his palms blinking red stone. He begs for help.
You do kind of wonder, like, how did he stay in the dome for that long with this like blinking light on his hand? Because he doesn't seem to be trying to conceal it at all.
No, he's like high-fiving the other Sandman. What's up, Francis? Okay, I'm kidding. But Jessica and Logan then travel via green screen in a little clear tube within a model of the dome. The pair enter a dilapidated building, or what passes for a luxury hotel in Sioux City, Iowa. A feral child named Mary 2 greets them, proclaims she's very smart, and steals Jessica's bracelet.
Yeah.
A roving gang of theater kids approach, and Logan asks the lead child his age. Is he 40? 50? Maybe Logan said 14, 15, but I didn't hear correctly.
I think it was 14, 15. But at one point, I swear they say Jessica's 6 as well. So I have no idea how the ages work in this film.
I don't either, and everyone is way older than the characters they're supposed to be playing, but except for, I don't want to spoil this, but of course I am, but an elderly character we will meet later. Logan's friend shoots a woman runner. Jessica gets her bracelet back, and Logan announces he needs a new face. The receptionist at the plastic surgeon's office is played by Farrah Fawcett, and she's the first person wearing a structured outfit with seams and a zipper. Unfortunately, her costume looks itchy because of all the sparkles.
I did find it quite funny in this scene where like you go in, you've got like every single one of the secretaries basically just this beautiful woman just sat behind like the typewriter. Very 70s.
It is, and Farrah Fawcett's disco mini dress is the most dignified costume I've seen so far in this movie. The surgeon is also wearing a tailored glittery outfit, and he facilitates a weird robo-surgery table. While Logan is strapped in place, the doctor receives an ominous phone call, which prompts him to attack Logan with medical lasers.
It's very convenient that they've just got this weird like torture device here, isn't it, really?
The two men fight, but the doctor is destroyed by his own laser octopus surgery machine. Francis shows up, but Logan and Jessica escape through a mall. They run through a slow-motion orgy with scores of completely nude women. And I would like to take a moment to remind our lovely listeners that this movie is rated PG.
Yeah, I'm definitely saying I did not remember this scene when I was younger.
Several women writhe around in glow paint. Francis chases them. And for the soundtrack, it sounds like a cat is singing along with a Casio keyboard playing computer sounds. The title character makes it to Sanctuary. The first time I watched this movie, I thought this was the end. I was wrong. A man's voice narrates how to enter, and then a group greets Logan and Jessica with plastic spears. Farrah Fawcett enters, disheveled and crying. She says that Logan killed the doctor. Jessica stares her down with big bug eyes and demands that she remember what happened, which was a weird and off-putting interaction.
I absolutely love the spears in this scene because I love the way they basically just spray them with this weird spray that comes out the end, and they've got to pretend like this is absolutely agonizing.
Farrah then repeats what Jessica told her to remember. The silhouetted spear bearers permit Logan and Jessica to pass, but Logan wants to go alone. Their location is then bombed by Francis and the Sandmen, which incidentally is the name of my doo-wop group. The Sandmen kill Farrah, shoot a bunch of people, and I swear I heard the Willem scream in the chaos, but I'm not quite sure.
Literally one of the best sound effects in any film ever.
Do you have a favorite movie that uses this recognizable scream?
I know it's a bit of a boring answer, but probably just Star Wars, just in general.
I think mine is Deadpool 2 when he's fighting the Juggernaut.
Oh, okay. I think also, was it like you hear it like in the Temple of Doom, when one of the guys gets thrown off the cliff towards the alligators at the bottom.
It's such a great scream. I love it when it pops up in movies. Jessica and Logan run through a damp industrial basement, and they encounter a friendly door that asks for their key. Logan intends to use Jessica's ankh necklace, but he drops it in a gross puddle. Logan's former friend Francis is gaining on them, but Logan remembers he had his own key in his pocket all along. The runners enter the room whilst Francis yells at them.
I'm not going to lie, I kind of missed how they got both keys. I'm sure they probably did explain it. I know he got one from the dead body, like at the beginning. But I don't get how we got the second one.
I don't know where Jessica's came from.
Oh, it's Jessica's, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
It was her 70s disco necklace.
Yes.
They are somewhere under the city. It's wet. There are big fish tanks. Jessica is soaking wet while Logan is lightly damp. Francis takes 2 seconds to pick up Jessica's dropped ankh to enter the barricade, and he catches up with them. Francis shoots a piece of glass that causes the corridor to flood, and the couple is swept down an impromptu lazy river.
And then we later on what we see Jessica with perfect makeup and perfect hair, even though she's been through a gunfight and like flooding.
It's quite impressive, the technology of makeup and hair in the future. Jessica and Logan enter a freezer. Now, at this point, I really thought this was the end of the movie, but I was sadly mistaken once again. They slip around on the fake ice, and then Jessica removes every stitch of her clothing, but Logan only takes off his shirt. After donning a few furs, a shiny silver robot rolls in. I'm not sure I heard the robot's name in the movie, but he's called Box.
Yeah, it's literally Box.
And you can occasionally catch a glimpse of the actor inside the mechanical costume.
Yeah, as problematic as this character is in some ways, I'm not going to lie. At this point in this film, I needed a character like this. Just something just completely ridiculous to turn up.
Box gives a tour of his winter wonderland as I watched with rapt attention to see if I could spot the camera crew reflected in the automaton's mirrored exterior.
Did you succeed?
I think I did a few times. Like when he's turning angles, you could see what looked like tripod legs in the background, like reflected on the corners of the mirror on the bottom. Anyway, it turns out that Box freezes every creature he encounters, including all the previous runners. He wants to freeze Jessica and Logan, but they're having none of that. Logan shoots the Maenad-O-Man and the ceiling, which collapses and crushes Box.
Some of the best animation in the entire film here, with the ceiling collapsing. Quite clearly just a screen in front of them.
The humans escape through a cave and are greeted by a green screen sun. Logan and Jessica are unable to identify the sun, like many of us in the Northern Hemisphere during the bleak months of winter.
I come from the UK, it's the same here.
But they conclude that they must be outside. At this point, I am confused by the state of their costumes. I know they've been on a harrowing adventure, but I have no idea how their polyester outfits became tattered so quickly. Synthetic fibers don't tear like that.
I'll leave that to you. I don't know about that, but
Anyway, the couple climbs up a hill and jumps in a lake to swim in the buff. They realize that the crystals implanted on their palms are clear. They must be off the Wi-Fi. As the music becomes sentimental, Jessica finally agrees to bone Logan.
we all knew it was coming, you know.
This time for sure, I was convinced that the movie was finally concluding. But wait, there's more! Despite being submerged multiple times, Jessica's futuristic eyeshadow remains intact, and the two of them come across an obelisk. For our lovely listeners who may be unfamiliar with the term, an obelisk is a tall, narrow pillar that has four sides topped with a little pyramid. Peter, would you mind sharing a little context about obelisks?
Yeah, so unsurprisingly, they're Egyptian. Again, I wonder why I was picked for this film. First things first, when I saw this one, I actually paused it because normally obelisks have like hieroglyphs running up them. Normally they sort of like just talk a little bit about the pharaoh and just talk about, and it's worshipping the god of the temple, basically. It's a little inscription to do with that. I paused it trying to see what this one was saying, and then suddenly I realized, oh, of course, it's Washington, D.C. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, and I have seen the Washington Monument in person, and they cheated. They used blocks of stones. It isn't one solid monolith either.
Oh, outrageous.
I know. The ones in Egypt are a little better,
Yeah.
I would say. The protagonists visit a composite of the Lincoln Memorial, and they're baffled to see a depiction of a person over 30. Their next sightseeing stop is a cemetery, and they can't figure out what beloved husband means. So I guess I don't have to worry about spoiling the end of John Wick Chapter 4 for these people.
I've actually still not seen it.
Oh no, I ruined it for
You're
you.
okay, you're right.
It's violent.
Yeah, it's high on my list, but I also see it's over 3 hours long, and I'm like, oh, I'll get to it another day.
It's fun. It's kind of like Keanu Reeves, the video game.
So like the other ones then.
Yes, definitely. A cat scares the couple and then leads them to an elderly man with spirit gum wrinkles. He lives in a cat library, and I know so many people who have this as a life goal. The man can't recall his name, but Peter, what did you say this character's actual official name is?
Well, if you look at the beginning when the credits are rolling, he's literally just called Old Man, which I think is just great, personally.
Logan is dumbfounded by the old man's lack of a death clock crystal hand piercing. He's also fascinated by the old man's white hair. While watching the film, I had to look up to see how old the actor was, and he was only 55 when Logan's Run was released.
Really?
The elder rambles on about cats and their names, and Logan looks through old paintings of old men. Francis reappears and abducts Jessica. Francis feels betrayed by Logan, but instead of talking about their feelings, the two men scuffle while annoying some cats. The dramatic music swells as the men practice their Shatner fight choreography, and Logan slaps Francis with a flagpole.
One thing I do love about these old films is just the sound that punches make. Just like that. A punch has never made that sound, but it's always so pleasing.
I would have loved to have been a Foley artist in the 1970s. It would have been great. Jessica was previously confused by the concept of burying the dead, but she gets first-hand experience when they bury Francis. They're now dressed in rags. Logan pets a cat, and Jessica promises to bury the old man. At this point, I really thought this was the end of the movie, but it's not. Why is this movie called Logan's Run and not Logan's Marathon?
It does feel like you're just waiting for it to end, doesn't it?
I think I've been watching a little too many dystopian movies because I'm just waiting for the beats. I'm like, nope, this is the end. Nope, this is the end. Logan wishes to return to the city, but Jessica wants to be alive. They compromise and agree to bring the nameless elder back to the city to prove that people can live past 30. On their journey, the old man prattles on about how the neighborhoods used to be different. Suddenly, they're in Texas at a big geometric fountain. The younger characters tell the man to wait while they dive into the pool. They swim underwater in a montage sequence that lasts longer than I can hold my breath. I can't be the only person that does that. Whenever characters swim underwater, I hold my breath to see at what point I would have died.
I don't personally do it, but I get the sort of like want to, if that makes sense.
Anyway, they lose their shoes, but somehow Jessica's eyeshadow doesn't budge. All of the domed inhabitants are on their way to Carousel to witness another sacrifice, and Logan screams that they don't have to go. They don't have to die. He shows off his clear crystal jewel, and Jessica starts yelling too. The Sandmen attack while Logan shrieks that Carousel is a lie.
I always enjoy these scenes because Logan has to try and look as crazy as possible, like the exact person you wouldn't listen to.
I know, and surprisingly, this wasn't the end of the movie. Logan 5 is interrogated by the computer, who inquires if he found sanctuary. Logan's rainbow brain projections inform the computer that there is no sanctuary, but she doesn't accept his answers. Knockoff David Bowie breaks the computer with his memories, and he then fights the Sandmen. He shoots the men and blasts the computer. Everything starts exploding. The styrofoam boulders crush the Sandmen. It's pandemonium. Suddenly, a swarm of people dressed like they're headed to a Peter Pan cosplay convention appear outside and greet the old man. A bewildered woman with a blonde mullet touches the elder's beard, and instantly everything is cool. During the revelry, someone in the crowd flashes the Spock hand signal, and then the movie finally ends with a literal "the end" card.
I didn't notice someone doing the Spock hands, I'm not going to lie. I do wonder, though, like, if I was this old man, how quickly I'd get annoyed by these people just constantly rubbing my face.
Yeah, it probably would rub off some of that makeup and spirit gum, too.
Yeah.
But Peter, do you know what else feels like a long and drawn-out story that's pretty bleak and makes everyone wish it would end sooner?
Go on, then.
The advertisements that support this show. Do you ever wonder who is keeping the host of Femininity in the Post-Apocalypse alive? Well, it's you. This show is completely Klaire's volunteer project, but amazing people like you can show support by joining the Department of Dystopian Studies at the Unaccredited College of Klaire at patreon.com/Klaire Lockheart. That's patreon.com/KLAIRE LOCKHEART. Welcome back. Before we begin our conversation about Logan's Run, I want to remind our wonderful listeners that the premise of this show is to explore dystopian media with feminism in mind. My favorite definition of feminism is that it's the radical notion that women are people.
Sorry, I've never heard that definition before, but that's hysterical in a sad way, I guess.
It's something I often have to teach people about out here in conservative areas in the Midwest.
Right.
While I enjoy doomsday stories, I find that many of them forget to include women and people of other marginalized genders. This wouldn't be a problem if it happened occasionally, but I notice that women are missing or mistreated from many of these narratives. My hope is that if we can thoughtfully discuss movies, then perhaps this will bleed over into our everyday lives, and I might maybe get to be treated as an actual person someday. That's bleak, right?
Yeah, just a bit, yeah.
Our goal isn't to explore every aspect of Logan's Run, but I want us to chat about what interests us with the film. We'll talk about the characters and the apparent utopia they inhabit. After our discussion, we'll rate the movie using the Maenad-O-Meter. I'd like to start off by exploring how this movie was a dystopian society disguised as a utopia. Peter, what did you think of this futuristic society?
This is like one of those questions that the more, since I've watched this film, it's just sort of played in my mind a little bit. And I've been, like putting layer on top of layer on top of layer, probably to the point where it doesn't really deserve. But I personally like the idea of doing like a utopia and a dystopia, just because I think if a dystopia did come about, well, maybe it has, who knows? But I do think it would try and disguise itself as a utopia. So I think that's kind of realistic, admittedly in a non-realistic way, but still. But because I obviously, whenever I look at anything, I have to look at ancient Egypt because I'm a cliche of my own self. But I was trying to sort of look at, say, Egyptian religion. I am going to come round to a point, I promise. I talked about it a little bit on my podcast where there's sort of a misconception about ancient Egypt where people assume that they're obsessed with death because you've got mummification, you've got them preparing their tombs right from, well, very early on anyway. But actually, the reason they're doing all that isn't because they're obsessed with death. It's because they absolutely loved life and are obsessed with life.
Yeah.
So the whole point of the Egyptian sort of afterlife, in fact, was that they wanted to carry on living as they were living now with admittedly a few extra conveniences, essentially.
Yeah, my favorite are the Ushabti figures where they would do all their chores for them in the afterlife.
How convenient, But honestly, if anyone wants to see Shabdis, they're absolutely gorgeous, I think, personally. But the whole thing I find with that is I kind of think the reason this society could sort of work in some ways is because, yes, you've got the promise of a good life because they're living for pleasure, essentially. And then they've got the sort of I'm not going to say the Egyptians were sold a lie necessarily because we can't know that. And I wouldn't want to say that. But in this film, the idea of the carousel, no, what was it called? Not the carousel. Carousel.
Everyone had really good skin.
The idea of the carousel is obviously showing how they've got the idea of rebirth being renewed. Mm-hmm. So technically in that regard, you've got all of the elements you need for starting a society that does have this belief that they're going to live forever almost.
Oh.
So I don't know. I kind of, the more I thought about it, the more I was thinking, actually, yeah, no, that could sort of technically happen on some level.
I hope that someone who's in grad school and working on their thesis will cite this argument that you made.
I hope what I was saying made any sense whatsoever because I felt like I was rambling.
No. When I was teaching drawing at the University of South Dakota several years ago, I would teach my students about linear perspective. So I'm going to tell you a rambling story and it'll conclude and relate to Logan's Run, I promise, as well.
Okay.
And so when I would teach them linear perspective, I would show them how to do 1-point perspective, which is the view down a long hallway. and 2-point perspective, which is similar to if you stood at the intersection of a city block at the corner and you were looking at a building and you could see the two streets recede into the horizon. And then 3-point perspective is like 2-point perspective, but you're really high up and looking down, or you're low to the ground and looking up. And I would have my students do an assignment where they had to draw and invent a utopian or a dystopian scene, incorporating one of these types of linear perspective to enhance their narrative. And no one ever specifically referenced Logan's Run in their work, but I remember so many students would draw these travel tubes that were elevated to represent that optimistic future, and then they would also do dark and overgrown scenes to represent a pessimistic composition. And so it was really nice to see in Logan's Run both of these elements used. So determining if this is a utopia or dystopian could be on the fence for people.
That's interesting actually. I suppose you've got to zoom in and see like the details to see the dystopia within, I guess. But honestly, whenever I think of those, like these traveling tube things, I just think of Futurama, as they've got when they fly through the little tubes.
That is one of my favorite shows, and I would use Futurama as a reference to introduce that to my students, but I'm glad they started making new episodes so I don't seem that elderly.
Yeah, I absolutely love Futurama. Four-leaf clover one, I think, is my favorite episode. Yeah. I like the sad ones, but like I haven't actually finished the newest season. I need to carry on with that.
It's pretty fun. Now, there were many strange characters in this movie. So, Peter, which characters jumped out at you?
First and foremost, probably Box, realistically. Yeah, I think there is kind of the issue of essentially what the one black person in the entire show, they put a box on his head, essentially, which isn't great, admittedly. I don't mean to defend that necessarily, and I'm not going to, but I do think at that point in the film, I was beginning to lose a little bit of interest, if I'm honest. Like you were saying during the thing, it was beginning to drag a little bit. And then they just threw this most like outlandish character, and I was like, oh, I'm interested again. Hello.
It helped that he was very shiny.
Yeah.
And previously, when we were chatting, you mentioned that there were some similarities between Box and Darth Vader.
Yeah, actually, that's one of the theories, is that Box may have been sort of an early inspiration for Darth Vader. Because if you think big evil robot, essentially, yeah. I don't know how true it is, but I like the idea, I guess.
Oh, yeah. I think one of the weirdest characters for me was Jessica. I was just really impressed by her weatherproof eyeshadow. But I didn't find her character compelling beyond wearing plot convenient jewelry and then becoming the love interest of the protagonist.
Yeah, not to jump too far ahead in the conversation, but I don't think her motivations in this film made sense at all. Like,
No.
I don't really get why she was helping Logan. She sort of showed that she didn't like him to begin with, and then she was like, yeah, I'll help you. Why? Like, she literally had no reason to whatsoever.
She flipped and saw the script told her to.
Pretty much, yeah.
But before we discuss Jessica's or the other characters' motivations, I do have to wonder if all the Jessicas that I know that are about my age were named after Logan's Run or after Dune.
Well, there's an easy way to find. Were they all called Jessica 1, Jessica 2, Jessica 3?
Oh, that's brilliant. Well, there was a lot going on in this movie, and so much of it is absolutely baffling. Peter, do you think any of the character motivations made sense?
Well, we've already talked about Jessica and how no. I think no, not really. I get what they, in terms of like Logan, for instance, we go to the main character, I guess.
Yeah.
I get like what his mission was, and I get like what they were trying to do in terms of him sort of starting off on the side of the Sandmen, if you like, and then slowly changing as he realizes the true nature of the society and that. But I kind of almost feel like maybe they were ever so slightly too subtle with it, because I have no idea when he suddenly, had that motivation change. Maybe I missed something. There's a good chance I did, but I don't know.
I saw that part where he was wondering if he would get his 4 years back because he thought his life was going to be 4 years longer, and they made his light all blinky, and the computer just didn't respond to him. And when he was pleading with Jessica, he's like, but it's different now. It's me. And
Well, you've got to make your main character really likable. You see, that's why you do that. You see.
yes, I'm glad the movie was called Logan's Run, so I knew I was supposed to be rooting for him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Were there any other characters that you wanted to talk about or try to suss out what their motivations were?
Not so much motivations, but old man. I liked old man.
Because he has the best name.
Yeah. Also, like again, from the first time watching it years ago, he's one that the main character I weirdly remembered. I don't really know why, but I just remember that one scene where like he's really sad that he doesn't have the orb thing on his hand. And he's talking about how it's not fair, he's not allowed one.
When you were a child, did you have box and old man action figures that you could play with?
I wish I had that. I really do. I was more Superman and Batman, I think.
You didn't have the Boris Karloff action figure from The Mummy?
I want that now, to be perfectly honest.
Well, if I ever see a Bubba Hotep one, I'll definitely send that your way.
I would be shocked if that exists, but I hope it does.
Did you have anything else you wanted to chat about with the characters, or would you like to rate the film?
Sort of not so much the characters. I guess we're almost, because I like to do things in a hereabout way, I guess. I sort of like, one of the things I was thinking while watching this is I almost wish there was like, almost like I guess like an upper class level of the society or something like that. Because if you look at other dystopian sort of like, let's take 1984 for instance, you get the idea that it's the government are the ones in charge and they're the bad guys kind of thing.
Yeah.
An argument against, I guess, like right wing sort of totalitarian politics, that kind of thing. With this one, it was just like a computer, and I guess it did make me think about the actual story a bit more, because I was trying to figure out how did this society come about. But it would have made more sense if there was a group of people who could grow old, maybe, but they were staying outside of the public eye or something like that, maybe.
Yeah.
But again, yeah, maybe that's just my preference. I don't know, but
yeah, because otherwise they're just in service to this disembodied computer voice. And I don't know why no one would have tried tunneling out of the city before. It was just bubble wrap. You could tear that, you just pop some of those bubbles and climb on out.
it would be a very satisfying way of escaping, to be honest with you.
Now I know what to do with all that extra packaging materials. I'm going to build a utopian dome.
If you do, please send me a picture. I'd love to see it.
Was there anything else that stood out to you with this movie?
I think that's everything that I've got. Have you got anything?
No, I'm ready to rate it if you are.
Yep.
The Maenad-O-Meter is our feminist evaluation system used to rate dystopian media on a scale of 0 to 5 skulls. It's inspired by the Maenads from ancient Greece, who would drink tons of wine and party in the woods with the god Dionysus. They would occasionally tear their enemies to shreds with their bare hands, which is why a movie that is favorable to the feminine characters will earn a high score. However, if the film neglected to include women or treated them poorly, then it will earn a low score. This isn't a rating of if we like the movie or not, or even if it was successful. We're just looking at the diversity and inclusion of the film, specifically how the feminine characters are treated. Now, on your show, I know you do a different rating system, and I'm curious, based on your criterion, Peter, how would you rate Logan's Run regardless of the Maenad-O-Meter?
Oh, that's a good question. So on my podcast, I do two sort of ratings. One for so bad it's good films, which I tend to cap at 6 out of 10. A 6 out of 10 is a really good, so bad that it's good film. One that's thoroughly entertaining, but normally for all the wrong reasons. And then a film that I just genuinely like, or I feel can't be rated on that, is just rated out of 10. I'm a bit stuck on whether I'd put this in so bad it's good or not.
Yeah.
I think probably just because I got nostalgia for it, I wouldn't.
Okay.
But I'd probably give it like maybe, I don't know if I'm being quite harsh, but I'd probably give it maybe like a 5 or a 5.5 out of 10, I think. Yeah, largely just because I think visually the film is incredibly striking. And I think that's kind of what helps it pull through a little bit,
Yeah.
even if there's not that much substance in a lot of it. But it does also have a tendency, as you were kind of saying during the description, to drag a lot in the middle.
Well, we'll see if you were harsh compared to my rating on the Maenad-O-Meter. I'm going to give Logan's Run a rating of 2 skulls. I hate to admit it, but I was impressed that the crowd scenes actually included women. There are innumerable dystopian stories that forget to cast women at all for the crowd, so I appreciated that about half of the population appeared feminine. However, the cast was overwhelmingly white, and I didn't notice any people of color until the very last scene when everyone left the disco dome to greet the old man. I guess I wasn't looking that closely into the box costume. But even though Jessica was the main character, the movie wasn't called Jessica's Run, and she was introduced to Logan on that Lazy Susan Datatron in a skimpy costume. She was completely undressed at least twice in the movie, but Logan got to keep his pants on. There were several topless and nude women throughout the film as well, which surprised me for a PG movie, but things were different back in the 70s. At least Jessica helped move the plot along because she knew how to begin the trek towards Sanctuary, but her main purpose was to be Logan's love interest. Regardless, my favorite character was the feral child Mary too, because she was smart and she knew it, so the movie gets a little credit for that, and that's why I will give it 2 skulls for Mary too. Peter, on a scale of 0 to 5 skulls regarding its treatment of women, how would you rate Logan's Run?
I hate to be very, very uncontroversial, but I also had 2 out of 5. A lot of the same reasons. What I will say, like a few more bits. First of all, I didn't notice anyone who wasn't white in this film. I didn't even in the end. I'll have to go back and watch it again. I think, yeah. So obviously Jessica, she helps to push the plot along. Okay, she wasn't the least pathetic character ever, but I also think I have seen, if I'm thinking of, say, like the Temple of Doom with Willie in that film, she's definitely better than that level.
Yeah.
So I'll give it something for that, I guess. In terms of like when talking about Mary and Jessica, that whole scene, what's that whole thing where you've got like, you're supposed to have 2 women talking about something other than like the male love interest? Technically, the film does that there.
Yeah, it passed the Bechdel test.
Yeah. On the downside, obviously, the circuit thing was, okay, fair enough, they had both men and women on there, but it was just very cringy, I thought. Again, like, obviously, like, it does sort of, like, have, like, obviously, all of, like, the secretaries of women and things like that. And, again, it's a bit of an eye-rolly point, but the whole perfect makeup thing as well. Also, did you notice, the scene where they're in the ice bit and they've got to take off all their clothes?
Mm-hmm.
They then just put them straight back on again.
Yeah. They would be frozen and crunchy.
There's no way they were dry at that point.
Unless there was a different robot that was named Dryer that came through.
Maybe, yeah.
Additionally, I want to share the rating that the lovely people at the unaccredited College of Klaire gave to Logan's Run. For each topic we cover, my friends at Patreon get to share their opinions using the Maenad-O-Meter. I take all the scores and average them out to reveal their rating. If anyone listening wants to contribute to the next episode, simply head over to patreon.com/Klaire Lockheart. For Logan's Run, my friends at UCK awarded this movie 3 skulls.
We are harsh.
That's okay. I enjoy having discussions about movies, especially when our opinions differ, because it's a much more fun conversation.
Yeah, I think in fairness, we're probably also probably looking a bit harder at it when it comes to actually judging this as well.
Peter, I cannot thank you enough for discussing Logan's Run with me.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I've enjoyed myself.
Before we conclude, I have to shamelessly plug your podcast so our wonderful friends can listen to your amazing show. Whether you love ancient Egyptian themed movies or you love to hate cheesy horror films, I cannot recommend the Mummy Movie Podcast enough. If my friends are tired of me gassing on about how great the Mummy Movie Podcast is, then go to Apple Podcasts or whatever platform you're listening to this on, rate the show with 5 stars, and in the review section write, "Are you happy now, Klaire?"
I'll keep an eye out for those reviews.
You can also catch bonus episodes by visiting patreon.com/mummymoviepodcast. That's spelled MummyMoviePodcast. Before I quit peer pressuring you into having a good time, I want to remind you to stick around to the end of the show so you can meet the next recipient of the Honorary Doctor of Dystopian Studies degree from the unaccredited College of Klaire. Thank you again for discussing Logan's Run with me, Peter.
Thank you for inviting me on.
This production is part of the Department of Dystopian Studies at the unaccredited College of Klaire. Is UCK a real college, or did I invent an academia-themed Patreon account because I like teaching art and think I'm hilarious? You'll have to decide this for yourself when you find me on Patreon. Regardless, the best part of being the founder of UCK is that I get to bestow honorary degrees upon some of the most amazing people. I'm excited to announce the latest recipient of the Honorary Doctorate of Dystopian Studies degree, Shannon Cole. You might know her as the Movie Lady, since Shannon runs the nonprofit that runs the movie theater in Vermilion, South Dakota. When she's not cross-stitching, she is also incredible at supporting other people's art. Shannon co-facilitated South Dakota Strong, the Barn Quilt Project, to promote vaccine confidence. She hosts the best annual Rocky Horror Picture Show Shadowcast in southeastern South Dakota and is part of too many projects to list right now, which is why I'm going to tell you to visit the Vermilion Movie Theater's website at vermiliontheaters.com, spelled VermilionTheaters. Welcome to the show, Dr. Shannon Cole.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be receiving this unaccredited College of Klaire doctorate.
Yay! I'm thrilled you could be here because I know you are so busy.
It ebbs and flows.
As the executive director of the Vermilion Cultural Association, you facilitate some amazing events, and I heard that you are doing a film festival.
We are, because my nonprofit happens to own and operate a movie theater. It's been our long-term goal to host our own film festival in this corner of South Dakota. And this is the year. We've got the right partners. We've got the facility up to top-notch, service where it needs to be. And we're so excited to open it up and have filmmakers come share their art with us and just invite film enthusiasts of all kinds to come experience that art.
That's exciting. What is this film festival called?
We are hosting the Vermilion Vortex Film Festival, September 20th through 22nd this year.
Are you still accepting submissions to the Vermilion Vortex Film Festival?
Absolutely. So the film festival is our mission is to be a place where filmmakers can connect, they can network, they can learn more about their craft, and they can share their craft because like artists have exhibitions and musicians have concerts, filmmakers need film festivals in order to share what they're doing with each other. And so filmmakers from around the upper Midwest, South Dakota, Minnesota, Nebraska, Iowa, anyone from those areas is welcome to share their film with us. You can go to filmfreeway.com, look up Vortex, and you can submit your film now through July 20th.
That's so cool. I'm really looking forward to seeing this event come around. And Shannon, I just can't thank you enough for squeezing me into your schedule. Unlike other academic institutions, I will not force you to give a long and boring acceptance speech to receive your honorary degree. Instead, I will ask you 5 quick questions so our lovely friends can get to know you better. Let me know when you're ready.
Ready when you are.
Okay. First of all, what is one of your favorite eschatology-themed TV shows?
Okay. I spent years dedicated to this fandom for reasons I cannot explain anymore. But my favorite eschatology themed TV show would probably be Supernatural, created by Eric Kripke. It started in the mid 2000s. And really the only first 5 seasons are truly sort of leading up to the apocalypse, and sort of about heaven and earth and the whole Judeo-Christian uh, establishment and its dissolution. But it's mostly just a TV show about two really hot brothers who walk around killing monsters together in their 1967 Chevy Impala of daddy issues and yelling at each other. And then they realize that they're fighting a war with heaven and they have to set their issues aside, their Cain and Abel story aside, to save the world. And the thing that most impressed me about the TV show at the time was the way, because it was a small budget TV show, the way that the apocalypse unfolded. They couldn't show the world burning, right? So what they did is they had the characters like out front of a TV repair store, and like all of the screens were showing different news things happening, like different disasters and like, volcanoes erupting and things happening and cars falling into sinkholes. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're watching the apocalypse happen on TV. And that's what all of us would be doing. Like, and that's what we are doing right now. So like the mediation of watching the apocalypse happen, even though they're kind of the people in charge of the apocalypse, was just like, I loved it. It was so good.
That's incredible.
Only watch through season 5. If you ever have an interest in Supernatural, you, Klaire, or your listeners, if you have an interest in this television show, stop at season 5. Just watch the first 5 seasons and pretend nothing else happened. That's
okay. I've caught episodes here and there, and it always just seemed like the two dudes in plaid, and they were brooding, and something serious was happening, and someone was always dying.
So much dying, so many man tears. Most of the characters come back to life because what is a storyline? Why suffer consequences? Your fan base wants what they want. It's ridiculous. But again, the original Kripke seasons, they were well worth it. The rest of it is nonsense, and the fandom will come after me for saying that. That is my unpopular fandom opinion.
It's okay. Part of the fun of discussing apocalyptic, post-apocalyptic, doomsday, Armageddon themed stories is we get to bring our own opinions to it and share that with our friends.
Yeah. And just as with the real apocalypse, we're all going to have a different opinion about what's causing it and why and how it goes.
Yes. Yeah. And speaking of that, when we inevitably wind up in a doomsday bunker together, Shannon, what responsibilities will you undertake?
So I've actually had this conversation with friends before, and it was decided that because I am a very good prioritizer and I don't take a lot of shit from people, I have been voted as head of camp supply logistics. So I will be the person handing out the toilet paper and making sure that everybody gets fed and arming you with weapons. I think I can do it with a sense of humor to keep people from getting mad at me, and that goes a long way in a crisis.
Wait, I hate when people are funny. You can tell by how much I never laugh.
I think it's why we get along, Klaire.
Oh, thank you. Next, would you rather fight a 10-foot tall demon from hell who is armed with a spork, or fight a haunted Victorian doll who is armed with a smaller, second, more terrifying Victorian doll?
Oh no. See, that's 2 against 1. That's not fair. I think, well, if we take supernatural lore into account, I think I actually know more about fighting the demon. I think I could pull off a pretty good salt circle and say the Pater Noster and get rid of him.
I'm glad you have an action plan for that.
Yeah, I think I do. I mean, assuming Supernatural's true, I think I got it.
They wouldn't put things on TV unless they were true, right?
I don't think so, right?
Shannon, what part of our culture would you like to preserve for future generations?
Okay, I gave this some serious thought, and I am a word nerd, and I would like to help preserve the cultural idiom. I know it seems really insignificant to be thinking about words when there are things like, roaming mobs of zombies, but but if you think about it, I mean, we have all of these cute sayings in English and the way that we talk to each other and sort of linguistic inside jokes with each other, like nip it in the bud, not butt, you guys. And it's a dog eat dog world, not a doggy dog world. And if you've ever heard someone say, well, if you think that, you have another thing coming. What is coming? It's not a thing. It's a joke. If you think that, you have another think coming. It's a play on the word thought.
Ah.
No one is throwing anything at your head because you thought something. I just get really annoyed when I hear, especially on podcasts, people misspeak idioms, and it's just my pet peeve. And I feel like, if I'm the person doling out the supplies, I have access to a lot of people and I can help preserve language. I believe that language is meant to evolve. I'm here for all of the slang, but idioms tell whole stories about culture and how we used to think about the world and how we relate to each other. And I feel like that preservation of language is really important. And that's my high horse. And now I can get off of it.
So you're saying I shouldn't take you for granite?
Oh my gosh. Can I drop the granite on you as another thing that's coming for you?
I apologize for that. That was bad. That was terrible.
No, it's great. It's perfect.
I once got my reviews back when I was teaching at the University of South Dakota, and one of my students did not find my dad jokes funny. So anyway.
No, dad jokes are the best. They're part of this. If you don't have a good ridiculous pun, how else can you laugh in the hard times,
And then speaking of these hard times, what advice do you have for us when everything feels overwhelming?
Okay. My aunt once said to me that one of her personal mantras is don't suffer needlessly. Or she'll ask herself, why suffer needlessly? And that just struck such a chord with me because, right, like if there's no award for the most pain or the best kept secret of suffering, if there's something you can do about your circumstances to ease your pain, do it. There's no need to suffer needlessly. Ask for help. Find a new place to seek shelter in the storm. You deserve to feel okay, even, or maybe especially, when things aren't okay, when things are very hard. There's no reason you don't need to suffer. Find a way to ask for help. Don't suffer needlessly.
That's incredible advice. That's something I could have heard like a decade ago, but I'm glad I'm hearing it now, and I'm glad that I get to spend this time with you today.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Shannon.
I am so pleased to be Dr. Shannon. My husband is a professor who got his degree from the University of Rhode Island, and he is a doctor, and now I rival him. I'm very official.
It's always a delight to catch up with you, and I'm really looking forward to the Vermilion Vortex Film Festival.
Thank you. People can always learn more at vermculture.org/vortex.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Femininity in the Post-Apocalypse was created and edited by me, Klaire Lockheart. You can find me at klairelockheart.com, spelled KLAIRELOCKHEART.com. I want to thank Aaron C. Packard of Aaron C. Packard Productions for doing the voiceover work and providing my recording equipment. See Aaron's work at aaronpackard.com. That's AARONPACKARD.com. Thank you for listening, you amazing people, and thank you for subscribing to this program. If I ever find a way to tunnel out of this dystopia, I'll be sure to bring you along.